Dear 10th standard students and parents, I am Kiran and I am an educator. CBSE board exam dates are just announced. I have made a few tutorial videos covering each and every concept in the NCERT textbook through question and answer format. The question and answer format will help you to fetch all the points that should be included in your answer. Basically, it will help you to cover the whole textbook in a short span of time. A word of caution though, what I am doing is giving you just an extra support. However, your primary source of learning should be from your teacher at school and the NCERT textbook. Okay, dear students, let's start with chapter 1, the French Revolution and the idea of the nation. Okay, I have covered this chapter through question number 1 to 9. Through 9 questions, I have covered this whole chapter. So, what I did was, I have framed the question and I have given you the relevant points here. So, you can note down these points, so that should be incorporated in your answer. Let's start with the first question. Which year French Revolution began? Answer 1789. Fill in the blanks, match the following type of questions. You can expect this. Alright. Now, question number 2. What was the single most objective of French Revolution? To transfer sovereignty from the monarchy to a body of French citizens and proclaim that it was the people who would constitute the nation and shape its destiny. So, French Revolution proclaimed that there should be sovereignty, that is, the power given by the people to the ruling class, and it should not be vested with a centralized monarchy. If you remember my previous class, you know the definition of sovereignty and monarchy was introduced, and you can very well cross-check. So, to transfer sovereignty is the absolute power vested within a country, and that power is conferred by the people to the ruling persons who were elected by the people. So, people elect their representatives and they rule the country, and that is called sovereignty. So, to transfer sovereignty from the monarchy to a body of French citizens and proclaim that it was the people who would constitute the nation and shape its destiny. So, that is the single most objective of French Revolution. It can be a 1-mark question. Okay, students, now let's move on to the third question. What are the measures introduced by French revolutionaries? The ideas of la patrie, the fatherland, and le citoyen, the citizen, emphasize the nation of a united community enjoying equal rights under a constitution. So, the measures introduced by French revolutionaries include concept of fatherland and the citizen. So, we have a fatherland, there should be citizen, and this emphasizes the nation of a united community, and this community will enjoy equal rights and there should be a constitution. Everyone will be under a constitution for the country. So, ideas of la patrie, the fatherland, and le citoyen, the citizen. So, fatherland, citizen, and the nation. Okay, and the nation, how it should be comprised of? The nation of united community enjoying equal rights under a constitution. That is point number 1. Now, a new French flag, a tricolor, replaced the former royal standard, because being a nation, there should be a symbolization using a national flag, and this is the French flag. Even today, they have this French flag, and it actually replaced something which represented a monarchy. This flag was replaced with tricolor French flag. Alright, so former royal standard was removed or replaced with tricolor French flag. Now, The third point is what is called the estate general was elected by the body of active citizen and renamed it as National Assembly. All right, just like our parliament, lawmaking body, they have got a National Assembly, and this National Assembly was earlier called Estate General. And what exactly is this Estate General? Estate General, the term estate system, the Estates General in France of the pre-revolution monarchy. Actually, it comprised of three estates. They call it as estates, which are that is the hierarchy of a society. Estates or orders of the realm. The clergy, which would be the first estate, and we know who the clergy is. Clergy has something to do with religious heads. Okay, heads of church. The nobility, the second estate, people who are respected, who owns a lot of money, they have the power, they own land, etc. The nobility, okay, dukes, duchess, then which were privileged minorities, this nobility, and the third estate, which represented the majority of the people. So all the three will be represented in estates general. However, this estate general during or after revolution, what did they do? The name estate general was replaced with National Assembly. That is something which they did. And also the members are elected by the body. See the word elected. So that implies the democratic form of system where every citizen which they say is enjoying equal rights, they are under constitution, and the members will be elected by the body of active citizen. So it's not that a few nobles or clergymen elect their representative. It's not so. It's the people of France who are going to elect their representatives. And the word estate general, the term estate general was replaced with National Assembly, something which we can compare with our parliament. Okay. Next point, new hymns were composed. You know what a hymn is? Like a song, a poem kind of thing. Like for example, in India, Vande Mataram was a political hymn. Okay, so mostly these hymns will always get associated with a national movement, a revolution, all right, some movement like independence, etc. So new hymns were composed, oaths taken, and martyrs commemorated, all in the name of the nation France. Okay, so new hymns were composed, oaths taken, martyrs commemorated, martyrs are respected, their names will be read out by the government officials, and there be due respect given to them. That's called martyrs commemorated. And you know who a martyr is? Martyr is a person. Normally we use the word martyr for a soldier who give up their life for the liberation of the nation, all right, or protecting their motherland. So martyrs are commemorated, all in the name of nation, the French nation. That's a fourth point. Okay, let's make a quick revision on this. First, the ideas of La Patrie, the fatherland, and La Citoyen, the citizen, emphasize the nation of a united community enjoying equal rights under a constitution. That is point number one. Mind you, we are focusing on the question, what are the measures introduced by the French revolutionaries? Then they have the most important thing, they have a tricolor flag for the nation France, and they replace the former royal standard, a symbol of monarchy and centralized power, that was just shunned, and a new flag was taken up. The Estate General was elected by the body of active citizen. That means they are elected by, not nominated by a few men like clergy or nobles, but instead elected by the body of active citizen, and renamed this Estate General office as National Assembly. New hymns were composed, oaths taken, and martyrs commemorated, all in the name of nation. 4 points over. Now comes the next point. The fifth point is a centralized administrative system with uniform laws for all citizens within the territory. Okay, so a centralized administrative system, uniform laws for all citizens within the territory. That's an indication of nationhood where every citizen enjoys equal rights. Then, internal customs duties and dues were abolished, and a uniform system of weights and measures was adopted. This has been a thorn in the flesh in those days in Europe, especially in France, as well as other countries where there is a big problem of movement of goods from one part of the town to another part. That means being a trader or a merchant, when you try to sell your goods, you'll have to transport it from point A to point B. During that process, you'll have to cross many what are called checkpoints or checkposts, where this customs officials, they will verify, they will weigh your good, and you know what happens? They will ask you to pay some money as customs duty from moving from one point to another. This is the biggest problem. You know why? There is no uniform measurement. For example, in India, in our place, we have got all weights and measures standardized in kilograms and grams. In the case of gold, it is coming to milligrams. Okay, so we are a standard system, and therefore our pricing is also uniform per kilogram system. Whether you are in Kerala, whether you are in Tamil Nadu, whether you are in Andhra, we always talk in terms of kilograms, grams, or milligrams. Fine. But in those days in Europe, in France, the problem was that they have got different ways of measuring goods. And say, for example, a person who's taking in, say, 1 kilogram of a stuff from point A to point B, when it comes to point B, they will measure the same thing in their own unit, and the tax will be levied based on their unit. And when this moves from point B to point C, there comes another customs official. He will slap another duty, and that will be based on a different measurement altogether. By the time it reaches the destination, the so-called stuff or the goods which had to be sold would have suffered or attracted a lot of customs duties. Eventually, the seller will end up selling at a loss. So, different measurements and multiple customs duties have really affected traders and merchants in Europe and in France in particular. So, what did these revolutionaries do? They internal custom duties and dues were abolished. They just abolished this kind of multiple customs duties, and a uniform system of weights and measures was adopted. Now, I hope you have understood why the concept of uniform weight, so that in any part of France, they will have only one standard weighing system. So, in any part of the France, every good will weigh or will be measured in the same way. Okay. Now, seventh point, French became the common language of the nation. That is another very important part, which we'll discuss in the future, in the forthcoming sessions. Like, the language has been a major barrier in Europe, especially European nationalism was impeded by multiple languages spoken by different people. But in France, they have this uniform or common language that became very easy for that made it very easy for unification. So French became the common language of the nation, a single language spoken by every French citizen. Now the last point, 8 point, is revolutionaries declared that French nation would pursue to liberate and help other people in Europe to become nations. This has been a very different viewpoint, because they are trying to reform not only France, but they also wanted to emulate this particular idea of revolution to different countries in Europe. So they were actually thinking of revolution all over the Europe, just like a French model. So revolutionaries declared that French nation would pursue to liberate and help other people in Europe to become nations. So we have got 8 points. So please include these 8 points in your answer if it is being asked as a measures introduced by French revolutionaries. Essentially, these 8 points should be there. Once again, let's make a quick recap of these 8 points before moving on to the next question. What are the measures introduced by French revolutionaries? The ideas of La Patrie, the fatherland, and La Citoyen, the citizen, emphasize the nation of a united community enjoying equal rights under a constitution. Okay, a new French flag, a tricolor, replaced the former royal standard. The Estate General was elected by the body of active citizens and renamed Estate General as National Assembly. New hymns were composed, oaths taken, and martyrs commemorated, all in the name of the nation, that is, the France. A centralized administrative system with uniform laws for all citizens within the territory. Internal customs duties and dues were abolished, and a uniform system of weights and measures was adopted. French became common language of the nation. Revolutionaries declared that French nation would pursue to liberate and help other people in Europe and become nations. So you should be writing these 8 points. Now let's move on to the fourth question. In the fourth question, what are the contributions of Jacobin clubs in spreading nationalism in Europe? That's a question. There are 4 points which you should answer if this question is being asked. They are: 1. The success of French Revolution urged students and other members of the educated middle classes. Please note down this point. This is very, very important. First of all, Jacobin clubs were formed and the active members were educated middle classes to set up Jacobin clubs. The Jacobin clubs were the most influential and radical political clubs. That's the next keyword. They are radical political clubs. Radical means someone who wants to bring in revolution instantaneously. They can't wait for long. They want things to happen quite fast. And most of these radical movements will have a lot of violence involved with it because they want to happen things quickly. Okay. When you want to happen things quickly, there will be resistance from the other side and that can lead to violence. Okay. So the Jacobin clubs were the most influential and radical political clubs during the French Revolution. Particularly, it was active from 1789 and till 1794. By the time it was 1794, almost all the Jacobin clubs got closed. Okay. So it lasted for, let's say, some 5 or 6 years. And in that period of time, their activities and campaigns prepared the way for the French armies, which moved into Holland, Belgium, Switzerland, and much of the Italy in the 1790s. Because in the previous question, we have just answered one very important point because revolutionaries declared that French nation would pursue to liberate and help other people in Europe to become nations. This one point, the 8 point in the previous question, where we said that it has become the policy of France to extend this revolution to the neighboring European countries. Here, Jacobin clubs were instrumental. They actually helped the French army to move towards the neighboring countries such as Holland. Holland is the Netherlands, something which you see here in this part. This is France. This is Netherlands. Then Belgium, neighbor of France and Netherlands. This is Belgium. And then we have got Switzerland. Look at this. So, French army entered into these countries so that they were actually helping the people to bring in revolution in these countries. Okay, because these countries were also ruled by monarchs. French armies therefore could spread the idea of nationalism abroad. So this is the contribution of Jacobin clubs in spreading nationalism in Europe. Okay. So with that, we have completed the fourth question. Fourth question has got four important points. Don't miss out these points. So the key ideas, once again, just a recap. Educated middle class, point number one. Radical political clubs. Okay. Then point number three is they helped French armies to move into the neighboring countries, and this eventually resulted in spreading the idea of nationalism in Europe, at least part of the Europe. Okay. Now we'll discuss the fifth question. It's a multiple choice question. Napoleon Bonaparte, who served as a French general, declared himself as the French emperor in 1804. He annexed Europe and introduced many administrative reforms which were called, answer is, Napoleonic Code or Civil Code of 1804. All right. We'll discuss the highlights of this Napoleonic Code in the next question. But before that, can you make out these terms? Have you ever come across these terminologies like Magna Carta, Charters of Freedom, and Montaigu-Chelmsford reforms? Fine. Magna Carta is actually a royal charter. That means it's signed by the King of England, King John. All right. After a rebellion by some of his the so-called barons, they called them in those days. And after this rebellion, King John signed this Magna Carta, which said that yeah, law is equal, or law is applicable to everyone, and even the king is not above the law. That was the highlight of this Magna Carta. Even the king should come under the law. He can't be above the law. That is Magna Carta. Now, what about Montaigu-Chelmsford reforms? Montaigu-Chelmsford reforms, you have already, you will learn, of course, in the forthcoming session. You might have already learned it at your school. And this Montaigu-Chelmsford reforms is called the Government of India Act of 1990. This is something which we study at the freedom struggle, and Jallianwala Bagh massacre, protest against this Government of India Act of 1919, etc. We will be studying that. Okay. So anyway, Montaigu-Chelmsford reforms is also called the Government of India Act of 1919. This is Montaigu and Chelmsford, two administrative officers of the then British government. Okay. Then what are charters of freedom? Actually, this charters of freedom is a declaration. Actually, the foundation or foundational documents, I would say, foundational documents of United States Declaration of Independence, US Declaration of Independence, that was on 4th July 1776. All right. 4th July 1776, America declared itself as independent. And then there is something called the Charters of Freedom, which are the foundational documents of United States, wherein they say that it is the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights, etc. Slightly complicated. I just wanted to introduce these terms just because that choice was included here. So, Charters of Freedom has something to do with American independence, and Montaigu-Chelmsford reforms is also known as the Government of India Act of 1919, and Magna Carta way back in England, way back in 1215, King John signed Magna Carta. All right, and that was in 1215. Okay, fine. Now let's move on to the sixth question. What are the highlights of Napoleonic Code? Okay, we have got 9 points here. Let's discuss each one of them. Napoleonic Code. Napoleon, through his Napoleonic Code, removed all the privileges based on earth. So in the previous question, we have noted that there is something called three estates where we have got clergy, then we have got nobility and their positions. They are all enjoyed by these people, a minority, by birth. Okay, it was based on the birth. And that was removed because there was something called equality before law. After the French Revolution, every citizen was treated as equal, and there is something called a constitution for France. So, Napoleonic Code recommended the removal of all the privileges based on birth, established equality before law, right to property. You will have absolute right on your property. Okay. And then this code simplified administrative divisions so that easy governance will be possible when you simplify the administrative divisions. For example, if you want to understand what exactly is an administrative division, consider India. India as a nation will be governed by a central government. Okay. Then what did we do? We divided this whole nations and the country India into different states. All right. Different states. And each state will be ruled by a chief minister and council of ministers. So we have got states. States were further divided into districts. District will have a district collector who will be heading the district. And the districts were further divided for administrative purpose. We have got corporations, okay, then municipality, panchayat. Look at this. These are all administrative divisions so that the governance come to the grassroots level. That's a word. Grassroots level. That means even the last person in the society will be getting the benefit of administration, governance, which happens from the top. That is the central to state, state to district, district to corporation, municipalities, and panchayat. So, likewise, so this is all about what is called an administrative division. Likewise, what we just said, in France also, Napoleon has formulated this kind of administrative divisions for easy governance. The word is governance. All right, that means the ruling. And he abolished feudal system. Next point, freed peasants from serfdom and manorial dues. And what is serfdom? Unfree labor. That means these peasants were legally tied to a manor. And what is a manor? Manor is a large country house with lands. These landlords, they own this kind of country house with lands, and the peasants will have to work in these lands, and they don't have any freedom to move or quit from the job, and they can't go anywhere else and continue doing for somebody else. That's not possible. It was kind of a bonded labor. Okay, you are an unfree labor, and this kind of a system is called serfdom. And they will have to do what they are doing is called a manorial duty. Okay, they will have to serve the landlord, they'll have to do the job, and they don't have any freedom to move on. All right. And in turn, they will get a small piece of land somewhere here where they will have to work. They can earn money by producing things from there. And for that also, they'll have to pay some money to the landlord as some kind of dues or fee. And Napoleon freed peasants from serfdom and manorial dues. All right. And they are now free to move on to any place of their choice. Now, in towns, guild restrictions removed. Guild restriction was another great impediment for the craftsmen and therefore traders. Removal of guild restriction means artisans and merchants could freely enter trades and conduct business without the approval or limitation of traditional craft guilds. You know what happens with a guild? Guilds had historically limited competition by controlling who could practice a trade and how goods were produced and at what price. See this? So everything was restricted. Who can do business? Only a few people are allowed to do some kind of a business. If you want to switch business, you are not allowed. And this kind of a rigid system is called a guild system. But Napoleon abolished this kind of restrictions and he encouraged trade and business so that a modern, competitive, and centralized economy was established. So, in towns, guild restrictions were removed by Napoleonic Code, transport and communications were improved, standardized weights and measures, and a common currency was used. So, these are the 9 important points that you are expected to include in your answer. Next question, question number 7. What was the biggest drawback of Napoleon's assumption as the head of the state? Answer. Napoleon destroyed democracy and calling himself the Emperor of France, he paved the way for return of the monarchy. That's the answer. Okay? Because French Revolution has envisaged that there should be democracy. That was the soul of French Revolution. That is establishing power of the people, democracy, elected system. But Napoleon destroyed this concept of democracy by calling himself the Emperor of France because the word emperor implies a monarchical centralized power. There is no democracy wherever you have got this emperor and empire. Okay, so empire is a place where an emperor rules. Fine. So he called himself the Emperor of France. Therefore, the very grassroots level democracy got destroyed. And that paved the way for the return of monarchy. So that's the answer for this question. Now, moving on to the 8th question. Napoleon introduced the Napoleonic Code even in regions like Dutch Republic, in Switzerland, in Italy, and in Germany, which led to an eventual hostility among the people in these territories. Why? Dutch Republic, that is, now it's called the Netherlands. Okay? Netherlands, that's their republic. Okay? So, in Dutch Republic, Switzerland, Italy, Germany, we have just marked that. Switzerland, Netherlands, all right, and Italy. In those days, it's called Kingdom of Two Sicilies. Later on, it was unified into Italy. Okay, in all these places, Napoleon introduced the Napoleonic Code, and you know what happened? There was eventual hostility among people in these territories. Why? And you have 3 important points for that, and they are: 1. The initial enthusiasm of people for French armies as harbingers of liberty gave way to hostility in these occupied territories. Some kind of saviors. French army came over to these countries, some kind of saviors, and they are kind of people who introduce liberty. And these armies, French armies, when they came to this country, thinking that they are going to pave way for liberty, eventually became hostile because new administrative arrangements did not match with political freedom. Because in the previous question, we have discussed that in question number 6, there were a lot of administrative reforms introduced by Napoleon via Napoleonic Code, and this kind of arrangements were not suitable for these countries. And this new administrative arrangement through Napoleonic Code did not match with political freedom which these people were expecting after this French army getting into their country. And they actually lost their freedom, political freedom. And we have just seen that Napoleon was more of an emperor kind of an administrator. He never liked democracy. So naturally, the political freedom is in in jeopardy. It's in trouble. Okay, so this is because new administrative arrangements did not match with political freedom, meaning that these arrangements did not give enough political freedom for the people of that country. Their freedom got curtailed. Their freedom got restricted or curtailed. That was the major reason. Now, it's restricted or curtailed. Then increased the taxation. Napoleon started introducing taxes, increased taxation, censorship. What? That is freedom of expression got affected. Forced conscription, that is forced the recruitment of citizens of those countries into the French army. See, French people can fight in French army, but why on earth a citizen of, let's say, Switzerland or Netherlands should join French army as a French soldier, and why he should fight for France? Okay, so that's called a forced conscription into the French armies, etc., imposed by France, led to discontent and hostilities towards France. Okay, so this is what happened. So once again, we'll recollect those points 1, 2, and 3. The initial enthusiasm of people for French armies as harbingers, okay, or the beginning of liberty gave way to hostility in these occupied territories. This is because new administrative arrangements did not match with political freedom, increased taxation, censorship, forced conscription into the French armies imposed by France led to discontent and hostilities towards France. So this is the answer for question number 8. Don't forget these 3 points. Your answer should have at least these 3 points. Now we'll move on to the 9th question. And this is a match the following question where we have got the years given and major events. You have to match them correctly. On this column, left side column, we have got A 1797 the year, B 1815, C 1870, and D 1871. And let's see the major events happen. Napoleonic War begins. That is 1797. Is it matching? Yes, it is matching. 1815. Fall of Napoleon. Correct. Through the War of Waterloo, Napoleon lost. Okay. The Battle of Waterloo. Famous Battle of Waterloo. Okay. So, through Battle of Waterloo, Napoleon lost in 1815. In 1870, it's unification of Italy. And in 1871, unification of Germany. All are correctly matched. Therefore, it is A1, B2, C3 and D4. A1, B2, C3, D4. Therefore, answer is 1. Okay. So, dear students, we have completed this chapter in history. The introduction, chapter 1, we have got the topic, the French Revolution and the idea of the nation. Okay, now we will have to discuss the next chapter. If you find this class useful, please let me know by pressing the like or hike button and by writing your comments. If you want more such videos, please subscribe to my channel, follow my page and share my videos. And I wish you all the best for your exams.